Hello guys, I wanted to make a last video on this build with the title How to Properly Optimize Your Bleed Barbarian. Now this is a highly optimized build. I will not go everything I went through everything I went over in the build guide video, only on how to properly min-max your build so you can deal the most damage. I believe I can reach somewhere upwards of 15 trillion damage on the training damage on everything basically except bosses. Bosses are gonna be our main weakness. So the first thing you're gonna wanna do is get this transfig everywhere you can. X physical damage. This is a multiplier, it doesn't have anything to do with the X physical damage multiplier affix you get on weapons. This is a separate multiplier and you want it on absolutely everything you can get it. I only managed to get it on like the ring, boots, all weapons. Two-handers are twice as important of course because the roll is double. And helmet, I think, yeah, helmet. I'm missing it on the others, but I still have a few important transfigs over here and I want to get to talk about each of them. So you want enough, first of all, you want enough cooldown reduction to have Wrath of the Berserker permanently up. This is a pretty big damage boost. Then you want enough attack speed. I'm not sure what the attack speed breakpoints are for Leap, but I can fill you in on what I have tested so far. So currently I have, with all my buffs up, I have 117 attack speed. 120 was with the Variana reinforcement active, another 10% attack speed, but I have one with 17 as you can see without the reinforcement active. Now what I have tested, I've tested 96% attack speed versus 116, and I can definitely tell you that 116 over 96 makes the animation as well as the recovery a few frames faster. Now, the way you can test this, the best way I found you can test this, is just record yourself while leaping at different attack speed values. Record yourself and then play back the recording in something like VLC, I'm using VLC, and just freeze frame exactly when your weapon hits the ground and start moving frame by frame. In VLC, the default button for this is E. You can simply move frame by frame and count how many button presses till your halberd next hits the ground. From what I've seen, with 96% attack speed, it takes 25 frames to complete a leap and 7 recovery frames until you can jump again. After I switched my gear to 116 attack speed, it took 22 frames for a leap and 5 to 6 frames for recovery before you can leap again. So there is definitely a breakpoint within that margin, 96 to 116. I don't know where exactly it is because I didn't test enough. So you want somewhere at least 116 attack speed with a 2-piece crucible, of course. Now the next very important thing is the seal. You can get two multipliers on the seal. The first one is the main line, 16% X damage, it can go up to 20. And the second one I don't have over here, but it's with the blood letters flow set. You can get either 10% X damage to vulnerable, to bleeding enemies I think, or 14% X vulnerable damage. Both roll with the blood letters flow set. Let's move on to the next thing. Okay, I already talked about the X physical damage. This is really important. If you can get it on all gear pieces, that would be optimal. Just try not to leave cooldown out of it. You want to permanently have Wrath of the Berserker. This is really important. This is a huge damage boost. Of course you want 4 martial skills or core skills on all your charms. If you can get them with resistances, that's even better. Then you want to remove this point over here. Don't use Juggernaut, because especially if you are not using the Spiritborn rune, the one that pulls everything towards you, this one does the exact opposite. It knocks back enemies you hit, and you don't really want it. It knocks back enemies who hit you, sorry. But this is bad anyway. You are permanently unstoppable if you have Breath of the Berserker, and you don't really need unstoppable from here, so no point in knocking everything back when you want them grouped up. Okay, for the mercenary I went for Rahair. I know Subo is a pretty popular choice, but I've done the math, and Subo, considering the uptime he has on the 30% X damage over time, it adds up to about 8.1% damage overall. This one over here, 15% with a 6 out of 11 seconds uptime, and another 25% X with a 5 seconds out of 30 uptime. This one adds up to about 12% X. I can't remember the exact numbers, but I'm sure it's pretty close to 12. So it's a bit more damage overall, and it also gives you 15% resistance, which is pretty nice, to be honest. Variana is by far the best reinforcement you can get. It's the only one that actually gives something to you as well, not only your mercenary. So 30%, 10% attack speed with a 30% uptime is pretty good. It's better than nothing anyway. Okay, what did I want to point out? Yeah, this modifier over here is pretty good as well. Not only the attack speed, I mean the attack speed is mandatory too, but the daze is also pretty important. I mean, daze is our best CC, the CC that gives us the most damage, because it ticks like 3 times a second from what I can tell. Not only once, the rest of the CCs tick only once when you apply. After you apply daze, the monster will take damage like 3 times every second. Check this out. Look at the trillions popping up here. And this is, I only stack bleed for like 10 seconds, 15 seconds. This is crazy. The numbers over here can get up to 15,000 trillions, something like that. And they tick extremely fast. I think this is more than 3 times a second. I didn't really count it, but I'm pretty sure it's way more often than the bleed ticks. So, okay, you need to hit at least 510 willpower, because the bonuses on the last board are pretty good if you hit with the willpower. And if you can't hit this, if you are lower level and can't hit this from Paragon exclusively, I would suggest socketing a Sapphire instead of a Ruby over here, because those are pretty important bonuses. You wouldn't want to miss out on that. I mean, 4% max life over here, 2% max armor, 5% max armor actually. Okay, so 4% life and 5% armor, that is already bigger for survivability than 150 strength. And then it remains up to you on how to rotate your affixes. Cooldown, attack speed. Cooldown and attack speed, actually. You can all keep in mind, you can also temper for attack speed on your weapons if you are missing it on your gear. But from what I've tested, hitting the last breakpoint on leap frames is pretty important. This build right now, even though it's not fully optimized, can handle a 146 speed. So it's not right up to 150, but still getting pretty close. And I'm still missing that really important transfig on a few of the pieces. Okay, now let's talk about survivability. I chose to use Iron Skin instead of Challenging Shout, and I have socketed the Challenging Shout to Rune over here, Morning Luck. The Morning Rune procs it often enough so we permanently have Challenging Shout. Check it out over here. It never runs out if you keep attacking. It refreshes itself about when it's halfway done, something like that. So you get the benefit from this bowl modifier. The second rune word I'm using is Yul Mot. mod gives us 1 Dark Shroud charge. It procs often enough so when you are attacked in combat you never lose your 5 stacks, and 5 stacks give you 40% all resist and 20% DR. That's a pretty big bonus if you ask me. Some people choose to use, instead of challenge shout, use the cry rune word. Let me see if yes, this one. So it pulls all the mobs around you right into your bleed over here, and then the rend modifier kicks in, this one. And they will all get bleed from the other one, but I'm having absolutely no trouble with elites in the pit. I melt elite packs sometimes in 3-4 seconds, something like that. Our biggest weakness is the boss, and this rune actually does nothing like it does, especially if you killed all the other around it. Okay, I think I've talked about everything. Yeah, on the boots I've been asked what the best temper is, and I think the best temper is barrier generation, since you absolutely don't need movement speed when you're pushing. But I also keep a pair of boots with movement speed temper around so I can get around faster when I'm in tower, because I hate being that slow. Okay, this was everything I wanted to talk about. This will probably be my last video on this build, since I'm pretty happy with where I got it so far. Good luck guys, have fun.